Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Outer Rim Cantina. My name's Alan, and today, boy oh boy do we have something incredibly exciting. So I mentioned on Saturday in my news roundup for all of the new announcements at D23 that the people that were actually at the convention got to go to a special behind the scenes panel for The Rise of Skywalker, and there they showed some brand new footage that they did not release to the public, and to go in the panel you had to give up your phone, you got patted down. They basically made it impossible for you to leak anything that was shown at the panel. But of course, after the fact, you had people describing on Twitter and YouTube and everything else what they saw, and two of the biggest things they said was that in the footage that they showed, it included a sizzle reel with scenes from all 9 Star Wars films, along with something very interesting that everybody was talking about, which was Darkside Rey, where she could, and they basically described her as, being clad in all black with a hood and looking all Sith-like. And she was wielding a red double-bladed lightsaber, and some people even said it resembled Darth Maul's. And of course, when I heard that, I started to think about Darth Maul's from Rebels, where he killed the Inquisitor and took their lightsaber and used that one, because of course his original double-bladed lightsaber from Episode 1 was cut in half, and then one half of that was lost or destroyed or whatever, because he only had the single half or one blade of it when he came back in the Clone Wars show. So that is what I kind of automatically assumed. But they released the footage to the public today, and on Monday, and it's even better than I could have even imagined. So the beginning, it does include scenes from all 8 previous Star Wars films, along with playing basically Rey's theme throughout the whole thing. But it's when we get to the actual footage from Episode 9 that things get pretty interesting. So first things first, I just this was kind of a joke thing that I saw, but there was this moment where the group arrives on, I forget what the planet's called. They said what it was in the Vanity Fair article when they released all those images a few months back, but they basically arrive on this planet, and there's this huge parade going on, and immediately I just thought of Burning Man in space. So I think that'll be pretty interesting if they spend some time there, and it's just get some good comedy relief mixed in with the film. If they're on some special mission to go and find Palpatine or whatever, and then they somehow wind up in Burning Man for whatever reason, that'll be pretty funny, I think. But anyways, moving on to the actual important stuff. One of the very first things that we see is the Resistance fleet coming out of hyperspace. Now, this fleet looks very small, which we would assume based on what happened at the end of The Last Jedi, when pretty much the entire Resistance was wiped out on Crate, and the rest of them could literally all fit inside the Millennium Falcon. But here we have at least one ship that we know looks familiar, which is kind of like the Tantive 4. I doubt it's the Tantive 4, but it's one of those type of ships that I can't remember the actual designation of right now. But then we have a bunch of X-Wings mixed in with some Y-Wings. So I know some people with the one of the opening scenes of The Last Jedi, where they used those new different kind of bombers to attack the First Order Star Destroyer. People were like, oh, why don't they just use Y-Wings or whatever? And people said, well, maybe the Y-Wings don't exist anymore or whatever. So it's good to know that the Y-Wings are still there and are going to be used in Episode 9, and we also see some A-Wings and even B-Wings mixed in with this. So we got all of the OG Rebellion ships introduced to us in the original trilogy. Now, one thing that's kind of weird is this ship over here on the side, and I can't actually really tell what ship it is. I don't think it's one that we've seen before, and it's definitely not the Millennium Falcon or something. So I'm not really sure what type of ship or even what its purpose is. I guess we'll just have to wait and see in the film what its purpose and designation and all that stuff is. But Moving on from that, the next scene we get is a massive, and I do mean massive, like 1,000 ships, massive fleet of Imperial Star Destroyers. So not First Order Star Destroyers, but the OG, original trilogy, Imperial Star Destroyers in this huge cloud of like, nebula-looking thing. And it very much reminds me of like the unknown regions, because I made a video on this last week or week before last or something about the rumor that Palpatine, a part of Palpatine's contingency plan was that he kept a massive fleet of Star Destroyers in the unknown regions that he would take command of when he returned to, you know, take over the galaxy again. And now that we actually see them, it looks epic, dude. I mean, look at it. It's like they're all lined up, just waiting to attack the rebellion. Now, I don't think that the scene we see the rebellion fleet show up in this scene are, like, the same things or one after another, because, I mean, it looks like they're two different environments. But if this really is Palpatine's contingency fleet, the Sith fleet that we've been hearing rumors about, then, I mean, the Resistance is going to have some massive firepower and a whole bunch of ships to go up against this many Star Destroyers. And then one of the next things we see is a scene of this massive red laser shooting down onto what looks to be Kijimi, because based on all like the rocks and the snow and stuff that we've seen, you know, in the teaser trailer, so it's very possible this is Kijimi. So the red laser is just slamming into the planet, and this could be the super weapon on the new Star Destroyers that Making Star Wars talked about in an article they released a few weeks ago, and I also included that in that same video I made talking about it as well. But it was basically rumored to have a new type of super Star Destroyer with a brand new super weapon that basically took the Death Star's laser, powered by, you know, all those giant kyber crystals, and shrunk that down enough to fit onto a new type of super Star Destroyer, and those were supposed to be, you know, waiting with the rest of the Imperial or Sith fleet for Palpatine's return, along with all of the battalions or legions of Sith troopers. So if this is the new super weapon, like, it doesn't show it destroying the entire planet, it just shows it, you know, shooting down on this one little area, but it does completely devastate everything. So it's possible that, you know, one single Star Destroyer with this weapon can't destroy a planet, but if there was 3 or 4 of them firing at once, that it could. I don't know, this kind of sort of confirms the theory, or at least backs up the theory that there's Palpatine has some new kind of super weapon waiting for his return when he comes back from the dead. So it's very, very interesting. And then one of the next things we see, you know, is of course Kylo Ren getting out of his new TIE silencer. I believe that's what it's called, his new TIE fighter at least. And it's all foggy all around. You can't really tell what's going on in the background. He's walking towards the camera, ignites his lightsaber, and right after that it cuts to the scene of the Death Star wreckage, and it's pretty much confirmed to be Death Star wreckage at this point. Now, whether or not that's the Death Star 2 or 1, we're still gonna have to find out, and that might make the difference between whether it's in the Yavin system or on Endor. But we see, so it cuts from Kylo Ren walking towards the camera to Kylo Ren walking through all of the fog and water to meet Rey on the end of this cliff bridge type thing, part of one of the Death Stars, and then they start fighting each other. And then right after this is when it cuts to what everybody has been talking about, and that is Dark Rey. So as you can see here, you know, she has the 2 blades of the lightsaber, and the interesting thing is this lightsaber is very reminiscent of the Jedi Temple Guard's lightsaber, and how it's like it's basically like 2 halves, and you like fling it open. The Inquisitor that was a Temple Guard, or the Grand Inquisitor that used to be a Temple Guard from Rebels, we can see him kind of flinging open his lightsaber like that. So it reminds me of that. Of course, it's longer, and the design is kind of different really the only thing that's the same is that opening mechanic, and then of course we see the red Sith blade. But one thing a lot of people pointed out was that the two blades are jagged, very reminiscent of Kylo Ren's lightsaber. And one of the things that I really wanted to see in Episode 9 was the Legacy lightsaber, Anakin's or Luke's or whoever's you want to call it. Anyways, the Legacy lightsaber with a jagged blade, because as we know, it literally got blown up in The Last Jedi, so a lot of people expected Rey to, of course, repair the lightsaber, but also for the blade to be jagged and reminiscent of Kylo Ren's. Of course, when the official teaser at Celebration came out, one of the first things we see is the Legacy lightsaber, and yes, it is fixed, but the blade is perfectly intact. It's not jagged or messed up in any way that we can tell, at least. So that was both interesting and a little bit disappointing, I guess, that we didn't get that, but of course, you know, subverting expectations, there's probably a reason why the Legacy saber isn't jagged, and we're just going to have to wait until the film comes out to see why or understand the reason why. But I do think it's very interesting that given this whole scene with Dark or Sith Rey, that they decided to give her both a double-bladed lightsaber, which does make sense because, you know, she used to fight with her staff all the time, and that's that could be considered the same thing as like a double-bladed lightsaber, kind of, sorta. But it's just interesting that they decided to make the Sith lightsaber jagged and not the Legacy saber. Now, I don't think it is possible in this scene where it shows, you know, her whole body holding the lightsaber fully extended that she has, like the yellowish Sith eyes. But I mean, I can't zoom into the screenshots enough to actually tell whether or not those are Sith eyes, so that'll be interesting to find out, I guess. But also, if you look at the background, it kind of looks like the mirror world from The Last Jedi. So it's very possible and highly likely, actually, that this is some kind of vision, and it's either part of Palpatine's plan to try and corrupt Rey or something, or she goes back to Octo and does the whole mirror thing again. Not quite sure yet. Just the whole concept of Dark Rey, whether or not this is actually real or some kind of vision, is very interesting. And even in interviews, Daisy Ridley and J.J. Abrams have both kind of hinted at Darkseid Rey being kind of more than just a vision, and there's a point to it that ties into the overall like relationship and story arc between Kylo Ren and Rey. So we don't know much now. All we really have is this scene to go by. But boy oh boy, I was already hyped for The Rise of Skywalker, I was hyped for The Mandalorian, but dude, this sizzle reel, like, even, sure, like, you know, seeing all of the scenes from all 8 previous episodes in the Skywalker saga was cool, it was nostalgic, it gave me the feels, but these new scenes from episode 9 really got me hype for this movie. And now I'm even more excited for the official full-length trailer to come out, so we can actually see more of this. And I have a feeling that the trailer will probably include some of these scenes that, like, we've already seen before in these 2 teasers, but I expect there will also be a lot more to it as well, but we'll just have to wait until probably October, rumored to be coming out in October, so we'll just have to wait and see until then. But that was my my breakdown of the brand new Rise of Skywalker footage. I would love to know what you guys think of these new scenes, Dark Rey, the Imperial Star Destroyers, whatever, down in the comments. As always, you know, I love to hear you guys' opinions on all of this stuff. But that's all the time I've got for now. I will see you back here in the cantina on Thursday for another Star Wars video that may or may not be Rise of Skywalker related. It just depends if they drop any more news now that D23 is over. So we'll just have to wait and see. But for now, may the Force be with you.